Hey folks, how's it going? So today we're talking about tweeters. So when it comes to very good sounding loudspeaker designs, perhaps tweeters are one of the most vital, if not the most important thing in a speaker design. Now, what we see here is 3 tweeters. Most of the time we see one tweeter, and what this is called a point source loudspeaker. So as the name dictates, when we have one tweeter, point is where the sound source is coming out from. And that is what a point source loudspeaker is. Now, there is disadvantages when it comes to this type of design, is that when you are 2 times away from the speaker in distance, you lose 4 times the volume. So you would think that you lose 2 times the volume, but you lose 4 times the volume when you are twice away from the speaker. Now, when it comes to a line array speaker like this, meaning now you have a line source instead of a point source, you get a different equation in terms of physics, and you get 2 times less volume when you are twice away instead of 4. Now that's really getting awfully technical and you may be already confused. The point I want to really get across here is that these speakers can be very efficient because it's using a line array system. And as so, it's 95 dB in efficiency. That's like a horn speaker level, so you can drive these with tube amplifiers, as I have, and you can drive it with solid states, really with anything. And we'll get into that with the sound quality in a minute. Now, before we get into why these speakers sound so great, basically let's take a look at what the tweeters are doing, because this is not a typical line array speaker that you see in PA systems. In PA systems, you see a lot of the same speakers and they are projecting into the room, into the stadium, so that multiple people can hear it, and you can get a louder projection. That is the end goal, to get the louder projection. And this is possible because when you are using a line array system, you are getting a louder sound using the same power. And that is essentially what these tweeters are doing. All these 3 tweeters are doing the mid-range, and the middle one is the only one that is doing the high frequency. So that is a little bit different from a line array speaker, in that a line array speaker uses the same drivers doing the same thing. These 3 speakers work in different ways to produce a larger point source. Now, with this being said, the interesting thing about this kind of design is that I don't know if you guys agree with me on this. This is just my thought. It kind of works like a coaxial design. So this is a coaxial driver for those of you that don't know. This is the LS50. So the tweeter is in the middle, and then there's the mid-range covering it. So this is kind of like that in a way. Not exactly the same thing, but in terms of projection of sound, it is able to kind of portray a coaxial design. So what does all this mean? So you get double the output. It's kind of like a coaxial design in a way. It's a line array. What does all this mean in terms of the sound quality? Does it sound good? We'll get into that. But basically, we want to cover the woofers first. So let's be patient. The woofer design here is that 10-inch, 2 10-inch woofers here. And this kind of reminds me of the Advents. And for those of you that have been around for a while, you probably remember the stacked Advents. Now, these speakers were never meant to be stacked by the manufacturer. The manufacturer never said stack these speakers, they're made this way. But people decided to do this, and they were famous, and they were called the best garage speakers because they sounded so great in an untreated garage space. So you will be using 2 of these bookshelf speakers to achieve something similar to a floor stander. So that was a very cost-effective way for a lot of the people back then to get a louder sound, a bigger sound for a lesser price. So the Tektons, they're basically doing that. If you split the speaker right down the middle, you have what you see as a stacked type of speaker. And I think this is a very smart design because this has brought me a lot of joy and a lot of benefits into what I perceive as great audio. So without further ado, let's talk about sound. Now we talked about the technical side of things. How about subjectively speaking, from my side, in my opinion, do these speakers sound that great? And I have literally nothing negative to say about these speakers. And this is why. First of all, because of the line array kind of system going on here, you get a really, really nice soundstage and dispersion without the kind of sharpness and brightness that people experience from horn speakers. So with horn speakers, sometimes you can't play certain tracks, for example, modern music, because they come out a little bit sharp and revealing. These speakers, while being revealing and extending very high into the frequencies and very sparkly just on the top end, it is a very, very easy to listen to speaker in my opinion. And they have a wide dispersion and a sound stage that is much like a horn speaker. So for those of you that have been, wanting certain characteristics of a horn speaker, but just couldn't get past the brightness, this is the speaker to go to. So how about the bass? So the two 10-inch woofers here do a lot of work and they are phenomenal. The bass response on these are incredible. I mean, I have yet to hear a speaker in this price range that did bass like these big boys. They are extremely fast. They are very, very impactful and has visceral impact down into the low frequencies. And what can I say? They kind of remind me of vintage JBL speakers. And even vintage JBL speakers go for a lot more than what these speakers go for these days. And the bass is just very, very reminiscent of JBL speakers that I love so much. So that really gave me the characteristics of JBL speakers, like my JBL L300. It has that kind of visceral impact and engagement in the bass region that most speakers cannot produce at this price range, especially at this price range. So that I really have to say, the bass, people who love bass, these speakers are phenomenal for that. Now, when we get into the mid-range is very interesting. Like I said, it's very smooth. It is easy to listen to. It is much like a horn speaker, holographic, has a large sound stage. So when it comes to human voices, vocals, strings, it comes out very much like a real instrument. It sounds realistic. And it's perhaps because it has that holographicness to it, but it sounds very 3D. It sounds very liquid and very engaging at the same time. So the strings, the impact and everything, the breath is all there. But the real beauty is that when you hear a speaker and when you close your eyes, the speakers disappear. Now, these don't disappear like a bookshelf speaker, because that's what bookshelf speakers are good at, but they do get very close. And that's very impressive for a floor standard, especially at this price range. But another thing that kind of grabs my attention is that it has a large sweet spot. When I was walking around the room, I didn't feel like I was losing out too much. Obviously, the sweet spot was the best spot for me to sit at and listen when I was doing critical listening. But when I was moving about the room, I did get a large sweet spot and I didn't feel like the off axis was terrible compared to when you are in the sweet spot. So the off-axis response on these are pretty darn good for especially at this price range. And I keep mentioning price range because when I first got these, I couldn't believe the price of these speakers were just mind-blowing to me. And so you can check out these speakers in the link below for the pricing, because they may have changed. I don't know. They may have a sale going on, but the price is under $2,000 for for these two big speakers. For the pair is $2,000. So for those of you that have been watching up until this point in the video, thank you very much. I'm going to share something very important right now, and that is that I've heard a lot of speakers. I hear $10,000, $20,000, $30,000, $50,000 speakers on a daily basis, and listening to these speakers, I found them to almost be as good as a $20,000 sounding speaker. Almost. About 70%. And that is a huge amount. Even 80%, I would say. The last little bit of refinement is missing when it comes to these speakers compared to let's say a $20,000 speaker. But the overall frequency and kind of the no-frill version of the $20,000 speakers is basically what these are. These speakers can give you so much for so little money that it kind of made me feel, I feel weird saying this because I'm a reviewer and I have to kind of place things in my mind, where they go, what's the price range, what's the competition. These really don't have a competition in the price range it's currently at. These compete much higher, and I'm not saying this just, the best budget speaker. This is outside the price point, is one of the best speakers that I've heard for its price and above. And I have no hesitation recommending these speakers to any of you watching. You will be very happy with these speakers if you get your hands on them. So with that being said, thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.